what I really liked about this discussion, excuse me, this choice of the developer, and the conversation I don't see getting raised enough, I tweeted about it today. What's the agency of the artist in this scenario? So, for example, when I was gaming early on, like original Xbox, when I bought a game, I bought the disc, that was the game. I just bought a game. That's it. It was a fixed good. I bought that game. I never thought about it as an art form. I just didn't. It was a game to play. Now, as games become more and more digital, it can be changed at any time for any reason, right?
Yeah.
So it raises questions. This is not a statement on my green side, but it raises questions. Do developers have the right to do anything at any time for their game? Are we buying a product that's a fixed good from when we buy it? Or are we buying a live service? We're basically buying the live creative art of the artist. Where's that line blur? Like, what are we owed as a consumer when things are going much more digital? What are we owed from our original purchase? That's the question that I don't see people, like, we're talking about it, but it gets diluted with the SJW part of it. But what are we going to?
Okay, so I don't want to get into the SJW
Please
part
don't.
about it,
I don't want to.
I do want to get into the gamer part of it. Okay, so you mentioned that you started gaming around the original Xbox. Well, now.
Well, no, well before that.
Okay.
That was just an example.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Because I was about to say, you of all fucking people, no. Like, my first video game and my first console was the original NES, and from that point forward, I collected video games. And I loved putting my consoles right next to each other in chronological order and seeing that evolution, right? And this is like a completely different way of playing and buying games than it was when I first started. Because when you bought fucking consoles and when you bought CDs before 2000, guess what? What you bought was what you got.
Yes.
So if the developer decided to ship a fucking buggy ass game, guess what? Forever, you will have that same buggy ass game. You know?
Yes.
After the 2000s, that's when we started being able to patch them through the internet, and that has created a completely different way that game developers ship and maintain games, right? Because it's really maintenance.
Yes.
So I don't know, again, as a gamer, having lived through this evolution, I actually really appreciate the maintenance of games. That's actually what I personally do. With my NFTs that are digital, I maintain them and I change them over time because why not? You know, you're afforded the opportunity to give the player a completely new experience each time.
Yes.
So just give them more bang for their buck, you know?
It's an interesting concept too, because as games are live service-esque, where you can keep adding features and adding things. Well, if we're adding, like generally, I'll use Larcenauts as an example. They are adding a lot of stuff recently, and they are all pretty much what the community has wanted, so they're getting positive reception off of it. But they could be one change away that wasn't asked for that negatively impacts someone's experience. It's at this point, it's not the same game you bought anymore. Sometimes, though, when it's a game like that, people just brush it off. It's like the meta changes no matter what. It's just changing. But then you hit certain topics, like what Superhot did, that's going to get a little more heated and people get a lot more emotional about it. But there's this fine line. Are we going to get to the point where games are more art and you're in for the journey of the artistic vision of it? Or does the artist, or are you buying into that, but at the same time, the artist owes you the ability to go backwards? So if you choose to go to vanilla, you can now go back to vanilla. Is there a responsibility on both sides that we're now understanding that we're buying art, but the developer maybe owes us something for it?
Two things.
Okay.
Number one, to me, the moment that I knew that video games were art was when I played The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, nobody could sit here and tell me that that game is not a fucking masterpiece.
You're on the internet, you know, right? Someone will disagree with you.
Oh yeah, but you know they're lying. Anyway, that being said, the artist does not owe anyone shit. That's point blank. You create a thing, and really no one owes anyone shit, whether they're an artist or not. Okay, that's just humanity 101. You are not owed shit. No one owes you shit, and that's just the way it is. if an artist decides creatively that they want to continue to serve their collectors or their buyers or their players or whatever word you want to use, then that's a personal choice, and it's more indicative of that artist than it is anything else. But really, no one is owed shit.
Does that mentality, though, change, just to give a little, not a pushback, but in the games of a disc, a cartridge, or something like that, we knew, like, there's people like you and I right now, and there's people in this chat probably who grew up with disc, cartridge, things like that, and when you bought it, we owned it. But no one ever, there's never been rules, there's never been an agreed upon anything of when things started going digital. What do I own when I buy the game? And just for a little bit of the story, so for Super Hot Guys, putting aside thoughts, one of the comments the developer made is that he did say that the original edgy story spawned from their own depression. I'm going to read this verbatim here. He said that he feels like the suicide missions, excuse me, my page just went down. My suicide missions are far too manipulative in VR, and that they made the game nearly impossible to work for on the team. So basically, he made a statement that it basically ruined development of the game to them. So I like your point in a way that no one owes me shit, because I'm a hard ass at work the same way. No one owes me shit. But there's a fine line between their ideals. Like, how would this ever fly on a game that I bought on a disc? Like, it wouldn't, because they can't do it, right? But then if they sold a digital copy, so say they sold a digital copy and a hard copy at the same time. Hard copy is not going to be updatable. Why don't they owe me the same luxury as the hard copy as the digital? That's the question. See, it's the rules changed, but we never had an agreed upon consensus of, did we agree to that? And there might not be an answer, but I think this is the conversation we should be having around Superhot, not screw it, they should keep it the same. Yeah, maybe, but there's deeper shit here.
I agree. I mean, see, these days I feel like that argument is invalid simply because if you do buy a hard copy of a game, like a disc, like, you still put it into the console, and the console still needs to download updates from the internet. Like, they're one and the same at this point, you know. I don't feel like I'm getting the full experience of a game when I buy the disc itself. Like, I will buy the disc as a collector, right? Because I just like to collect them and see them physically, because it makes my heart really happy. But, like, I'm not collecting it because I expect that physical item to be the end-all be-all, you know? Like, since it's 2021, everything's been digital for so long, and you and I, we've been, you know, like, downloading, like, updates for our games for the last, like, I don't know, like 15 or so years at least. Like, this is just kind of the way it is now. Like, the you buy a game as is, that paradigm is dead and buried.
Hit that subscribe button to stay on top of the daily clips, or catch the debates and fireside chats live on the main channel down in the video description. See you next time, Space Cowboys.